leader from my constituency, from one of the wards, was abducted. That is 14 days ago. Mr. Speaker, one of the platforms this regime used when they were campaigning was that there will be no abductions, there will be no illegal confinement, and there will be no extrajudicial killings. Mr. Speaker, the statement issued by the chairman, and I must admit that it's just a conveyor belt, lacks substance completely, and it does not allude to the circumstances of the missing leader. Mr. Speaker, here is a situation. You know, everywhere in Nairobi right now there are CCTVs. Everywhere in Nairobi there are CCTVs, Mr. Speaker. Is an elected leader. The road, the Enterprise Road, just next to where this particular leader was abducted, has so many CCTVs, Mr. Speaker. And therefore, by now, those who are in charge of this particular sector know the identities of the tormentors of this particular MCA. They know the details of the cars. They know everything, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, while it is the right of every Kenyan to enjoy the right to be heard, the right to be tried fairly, this era of illegal confinement, Mr. Speaker, and abduction is something that has never been anticipated in the current constitution, Mr. Speaker. And therefore, this answer, as it is right now, has not said anything, has not shed any light. He only said we are investigating. 14 days, Mr. Speaker, since an elected leader has, of course, every Kenyan has a right to security, but here is an elected leader, Mr. Speaker. He is still missing. Mr. Speaker, I want to also table, Mr. Speaker, just for the information, that on 6 August, this particular leader was summoned by the County Security and Intelligence Committee of Wajir, Mr. Speaker, and this is what the letter says. The Honorable Yusuf Hussein, MCA, Anole Delaware, the telephone meeting with the County Security Committee of Wajir. You are told you are requested to, I've just learned this, Mr. Speaker, and this is what the letter says. You are requested to attend a meeting on Thursday, 8 August 2024 at the County Commissioner's Office, Wajir, at 10 a.m. The County Security and Intelligence Committee...
Kenan, you seem to be reading from a faded copy of a letter.
It's a copy, Mr. Speaker. It's an official letter. I'll give it to you. I'll hand over. You can counter-check. It's official.
Okay.
And I'm too old, Mr. Speaker, to bring anything that is not properly validated. Mr. Speaker, the County Security and Intelligence Committee wishes to discuss with you issues touching on the security within Dela and Nolewad. I want to table this document, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, taking this into account, this is a lead document. Meaning, therefore, there must have been some issues between that particular MCA and the County Security Committee. If that has been escalated to the national level, we are not saying he has committed crime or he has not committed crime, Mr. Speaker. But if truly this person who has been missing, why don't you produce him and take him to court? And therefore, Mr. Speaker, this answer, and I empathize with my good friend Gabriel, you have not said anything. They have not given you anything. In fact, they are setting you up. This answer has not said anything at all, on the way about of that particular leader. And therefore, Mr. Speaker...
Pass on the letter to him. You have made the point. Bashir? Major Bashir, give him the mic. 1 minute.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I listened to the response by the minister concerned through the chair, and I can attest to the fact that that response is very, very shallow. Honorable Speaker, the individual abducted is an elected MCA, and it's not a coincidence that on the 8th of September, he was summoned by the County Security Committee, and on 13th, he disappeared. And I think the era of abductions is something that is still with us, unfortunately. So we call upon the government, especially the security agencies, to immediately and urgently find where the MCA is. The family is agonizing. They don't know what to say. And the worst part is that the National Police Service has not even come to address this matter and even talking to the families concerned to tell them what they're doing about it. We want them to do what they are supposed to do, to protect lives and properties of Kenyans. And we ask them to tell us where this elected MCA is at this point in time. It's now 2 weeks since his abduction. And there are CCTV cameras in the whole of this country, especially in Nairobi. How come they are unable to know who abducted the MCA? The Uber that he has used has recorded a statement. They can see it. He knows. However, the CCTV cameras cannot be traced. It's unfortunate also. So we ask that statement is not.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I have listened to the response of the chairman of the committee I belong to. It's not sufficient, Mr. Speaker. It's 14 days since the honorable member was abducted. It's very unfortunate, sad to the people who elected him, to the people, to the county he comes from, Mr. Speaker. We are unable to stay our homes. We are unable to do our day-to-day activities because of this honorable member who is missing. All indications are there, Mr. Speaker, to show that this indeed honorable member is taken by the people we suspect. We demand the security agencies, Mr. Speaker, to bring back our honorable member, to bring back the honorable member for Anole Dela Ward, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, we don't know how we are going to go back to our constituency and county if this honorable member is not brought back to his people. It's on that note that I'm asking my chair, the committee that I belong to, Mr. Chair, it's a matter of urgency that we bring back our son, our leader. If today a honorable member is missing, then it doesn't make any sense. Anyone can miss any time, any day, Mr. Speaker. Thank you.
Yes, Tongoyo.
Honorable Speaker, first of all, I think I did actually indicate that I really feel the frustration from the members from the said county.
Have you seen the letter whose copy?
I haven't, and I think as it should be treated, not to be as it is for now, Honorable Speaker, the stability of the letter is in question. Maybe we need your guidance. But having said this, Mr. Speaker, we all know such situations, investigation could be complex. And the members already alluding or making a suggestion that it is the MCA was abducted by the security agency, which cannot be substantiated either. So I would rather we leave it open. The investigation is ongoing, but we should not conclude that he was abducted by the security agency. That is an assumption, Mr. Speaker.
What you do, Honorable Tongoyo, that letter, that no soliciting, that letter has a telephone number, and on the face of it, the signatory is a DC, or you call them what? Is a county commissioner rather. So get the letter after authentication by the clerk, then get to your team at internal security and bring back additional information on this on Thursday afternoon. Yes.
Thank you so much for that guidance, Mr. Speaker. I want to confirm, Mr. Speaker.
Yes.
I want to confirm beyond reasonable doubt that that letter comes from the County Security Committee, and therefore here it is. Mr. Speaker, I also want to table an affirmation by one great Kenyan taxi driver called Wambua Kioko. Is also an affirmation, and the oath. I also want to table it because the content is also very clear, so that as the chairman responds to this.
Okay, Nan, the taxi driver's testimony is not disputed. Tongoya said...
I want to give him the whole detail, Mr. Speaker, the whole affirmation,
yes.
the whole, so that, for the benefit, so that he benefits also from this. But Mr. Speaker, finally allow me to say this. You have been around. You have gone through the ladder. You have served the three arms, let me say, almost the three arms of government. You know what it is.
Not almost, I have.
You have served the three arms of government, and you know what it takes. Mr. Speaker, no amount, and I want Togoyo and other groups to hear this, no amount of blackmail, no amount of intimidation, no amount of whatever somebody wants to do will allow us to forget the existence of Honorable Yusuf Hussein. Those who are holding him, I want them to hear where I am. I want them to hear what I'm saying. We will not allow you to get away with that crime. Produce Honorable Yusuf in court.
Yes.
That is what the due process demands.
We will not allow.
Produce him to court. Produce him in court. Deal with him in court. But hold him in, Mr. Speaker. We will not allow it. That is not the modern day Kenya.
Give the papers to the clerks. Honorable members, allow me to acknowledge the following schools in the gallery. Kalulini Comprehensive School from Kibwezi West, Makueni. Oak Tree Primary School from Mavoko, Machakos. Timau AI PCA Mother Council from Buri, Meru. Kamwiru Boys Secondary School, Kirinyaga Central, Kirinyaga. Honorable Kaimenyi, Women Leader Meru, has asked me to acknowledge the Mother Council from Timau. You can do so in 1 minute and welcome the rest of the schools on our behalf. Mike.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. Yes. I really want to thank you for giving me this opportunity to welcome the Mother Council from African Independent Pentecostal Church of East Africa, of which I belong. They are from Timau in Bori constituency. I also wish to thank them for the forward-looking. As you can see, Mr. Speaker, these are ladies, young ladies, and I want to congratulate them for their efforts, showing leadership even as they are ladies. Sometimes we think the reverse gender is more forward-looking, but you can see they are just ladies from Mother Council. Mother Council is the leadership of that church. Mr. Speaker, I also wish to thank also the students who are here with us and acknowledge them for wanting to have more knowledge even regarding these parliaments. So please feel welcome, and thank you again, Mr. Speaker, for this opportunity.
Majority Leader.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, on Thursday, 19th September 2024, on my behalf, the Chair of the Health Committee, Honorable Pukose, issued a statement, the usual Thursday statement on behalf of the House Business Committee, which met on Tuesday, 17th September 2024, to prioritize business for consideration during the week. Honorable Speaker, it was indicated to the House that the Cabinet Secretary for the Ministry of Environment, Climate Change and Forestry would appear before the House to answer questions tomorrow, Wednesday, 25th September 2024. However, I am in receipt of a letter from the Cabinet Secretary stating that he is out of the country on official duties. He is accompanying His Excellency the President to the Republic of Kenya to the 79th session of the United Nations General Assembly, UNGA 79 in New York. Honorable Speaker, following further consultations, we have scheduled the Cabinet Secretary for the Ministry of Youth Affairs, Creative Economy and Sports to respond to questions that touch on the following thematic areas. A, state of preparedness of key sporting facilities to host international events. 2, 1, appraise on the state of preparedness of the country in terms of infrastructure facilities and other logistics to successfully host international sporting events, more specifically the planned hosting of the African Nations Championship, CHAN, and the Africa Cup of Nations, AFCON. 2, state the current condition of key sports facilities in the country, including their maintenance, modernization, and suitability for hosting international events. And 3, provide specific measures on strategies put in place by the ministry to accelerate the completion of the stalled or incomplete stadiums across the country. B is facilitation of national sports teams, to state the measures in place to ensure timely preparation, coordination, management, and facilitation of sports teams to represent the country in various sporting disciplines. And C, Honorable Speaker, is a mandate of the Kenya Academy of Sports to, one, appraise on the challenges facing the Kenya Academy of Sports in the development of grassroots talent in the country and the measures to address the challenges, and two, outline the number of sports academies that have been set up nationwide, including details of their effectiveness at the grassroots level and whether there are strategies in place to ensure their continuity. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you, Majority Leader. Next order.
Order number 8, the Mark Beans Bill, Senate Bill number 13 of 2022, second reading, question to be put.
Thank you. Order, members on their feet, take your seats. Members on their feet, Busia Women Rep, take your seat. Honorable members, now I put the question at the order number 8, which is that the Mang Beans Bill, Senate Bill number 13 of 2022, be now read a second time. As members of that opinion say aye. As members of the contrary opinion say nay. Nay. The nays have it. Next order.
Order number 9, motion, enhancing reporting of parliamentary business on online platforms. Question to be put.
Order, members on their feet, take your seats again. Take your seats. Honorable Naisula and the member for Bumula, take your seats. Honorable Ruku, take your seat. Honorable members, I now put the question at order number 9, which is that this House adopts the report of the Select Committee on Parliamentary Broadcasting and Library on enhancing reporting of parliamentary business on online platforms, laid on the table of the House on Wednesday, 4th October 2023. As members of that opinion say aye. Aye. Will those of the contrary opinion say nay? The ayes have it. Honorable members, I had promised you that I'll allow you 1 hour to ventilate on the issue of NG-CDF, and I'll invite your leaders, starting with the Majority Leader on NG-CDF judgment, and then followed by the Minority Leader. If we can give them 5 minutes each, then the rest of the members, you can take 2 minutes each. Is that okay? If we say 5 and you have 1 hour, very few will speak. So let's do 3. Kimani Chungwa, you can go with 5 minutes. Junet, be ready with 5 minutes. Then the rest will do 3, 3, 3.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, for this opportunity. Honorable Speaker, there has been a misconception that NG-CDF is a fund that belongs to members of parliament. And indeed, Honorable Speaker, for those who have taken time, and I'm sure many of us have have read the judgment that was pronounced by the courts, there is also that misconception within the courts that NG-CDF is a fund, as it were before 2015, where MPs are still patrons of this fund, and far from it, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, when I read that judgment, I could not help myself but clearly see that this was more of a political judgment than a legal judgment, Honorable Speaker. The politics in that judgment, Honorable Speaker, speaks volumes. Honorable Speaker, I am not a lawyer, but interpretation of the law is just as simple as reading plain English. With all due respect to the lawyers in this House and seasoned ones like yourself, Honorable Speaker, who has also sat as on the bench. Honorable Speaker, when the judges pronounce themselves on matters touching on CDF and claim that there is duplication of functions between NG-CDF and the county governments, Honorable Speaker, that is a language spoken by the Council of Governors, Honorable Speaker. And we should not lie to ourselves that the judges are simply saying what the Council of Governors has been saying. Honorable Speaker, when we recrafted the NG-CDF Act from the old CDF Act, the NG-CDF Act was very particular that NG-CDF will only serve two particular functions, that of education, excluding the early childhood education, ECDE, that is a function that belongs to counties. And there is not a single constituency, Honorable Speaker, that I know of where NG-CDF money is utilized either to construct or to take care of ECD classrooms in our primary schools, Honorable Speaker. The other function of NG-CDF touched on security, and there is absolutely nothing in the county government architecture and the functions under Schedule 4 of our Constitution where county governments deal with matters security. It is NG-CDF that has helped even in areas where banditry and even acts of terrorism, like in Lamu and other areas, Honorable Speaker, and parts of northern Kenya. It is through NG-CDF intervention to establish police posts and police stations, Honorable Speaker, that we have helped the national government in dealing with matters in security. The county governments, even in those very dangerous areas, go to the North Rift, go to northeastern Kenya, there is not a single county government involved in security work, Honorable Speaker. And therefore, Honorable Speaker, because I see my time is over, I just want to plead to our judiciary, Honorable Speaker, that you have no reason as judges to seem popular with governors. Honorable Speaker, because that judgment is just a popularity contest judgment for judges who pronounce themselves, Honorable Speaker, on that matter of NG-CDF. But may it be known to them that without NG-CDF, there are children in this country who will never access education from the bursaries they get from NG-CDF, Honorable Speaker. There are children in this country, Honorable Speaker, who years ago, without CDF, were studying under trees without classrooms. Honorable Speaker, with the recent floods, many of our schools had either classrooms or even Honorable Speaker, I was saying with the last floods, either classrooms or ablution blocks that were swept away by floods. Without the intervention of NG-CDF, Honorable Speaker, there are children who will not be in school today, Honorable Speaker. I know we have another chance with the Court of Appeal and all the way to the Supreme Court, Honorable Speaker. And we also have a chance to correct what we need to correct from this House because we are the law-making House. If we have to recraft another NG-CDF Act, let us do it, Honorable Speaker. If we have to anchor NG-CDF as we proposed under the NADCO bills in the Constitution, it is high time we now anchor NG-CDF, not for the sake of members of Parliament, but for the sake of the people we represent. Those people who have no voice if we don't speak to them. Those people who judges cannot hear unless we speak to the judges. Let us ask our judges to drop the politics, leave NG-CDF alone, and allow the children of Kenya to access education, allow the people of the North Rift, allow those who are terrorized by terrorists to live in a country where they are secure.
Junet.
Mr. Speaker, I can't agree more, Mr. Speaker, with the majority leader that this is a political judgment, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, there is no act of parliament that has been subjected to litigation more than the CDF Act, Mr. Speaker. And this is done basically by people who hate members of parliament. They are not doing it for anything else other than hatred that they have for members of parliament, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, when I read the judgment of Mr. Speaker of the court, I was shocked, Mr. Speaker, because in 2013, the same act was subjected to litigation, Mr. Speaker, and at that time they were saying that Parliament is dividing the revenue into three: national government revenue, county government revenue, and the CDF, Mr. Speaker. Subsequently, this House did an amendment and did the division of revenue, where the money was divided between the county governments and the national government, and the CDF was put under the national government, Mr. Speaker. There is no difference between a ministry that is getting an allocation from the national budget of the national government than the CDF, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I was shocked to see in the judgment of the court that one of the reasons why they are saying this act is unconstitutional is because Parliament passes 7 names of members of the CDF committee, Mr. Speaker. How many names do we pass here? We pass even names of commissions, we pass names of county secretary, we pass names here, PSS, AG, we pass here even commissioner of what this is called, commissioner communication authority, Mr. Speaker. Now, what is the problem of passing names here? The other thing that has shocked me about this judgment, Mr. Speaker, is that they are saying the term of the fund manager is for 5 years, which is equivalent to 5 years of being a member of Parliament, Mr. Speaker. There are fund managers who have been in office for the last 20 years, Mr. Speaker. I don't know where the judges were reading, what they were reading, Mr. Speaker, whether they read the submissions of our lawyers, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I am shocked because the judges behaved as though they live in another country, Mr. Speaker. Recently, there was a burial in my constituency, and I must say this, of a judge, Mr. Speaker. And the funeral was conducted in a primary school, and those classes were built by CDF, Mr. Speaker. They were not built by county government or built by anybody else. Mr. Speaker, the way the CDF has changed the lives of Kenyans, Mr. Speaker, every person knows in this country, including judges. Do they not go home? Do they not come from villages in this country, Mr. Speaker? And people, I'm asking the judges on the floor of this House, from the floor of this House, Mr. Speaker. In my constituency alone, there are over 3,000 to 4,000 students who benefit from bursary. Children of single mothers, orphans, Mr. Speaker. Where do they expect us to take those children, Mr. Speaker? If CDF is scrapped, the best thing I can do is to put those children in a bus and bring them to the homes of the judges, Mr. Speaker, so they can give them fees, so that those children can go back to school, Mr. Speaker. You can't make the lives of Kenyans miserable by just doing a judgment that does not make any sense, Mr. Speaker, according to me. And we are allowed to critique judgment, Mr. Speaker. They had their say. We must have our say here on this floor, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I have been a believer, I have been a supporter of the independence of the judiciary, Mr. Speaker. But now I've come to believe that judiciary now is living in an ivory tower, and they must come down from that ivory tower, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the problem in this country about the 3 arms of government, the other 2 arms of government, the executive and the legislature, are subjected to accountability through elections after every 5 years. Judges are never accountable to anyone. They're accountable to themselves and to JSC. Where this is a judgment that has been procured by the Council of Governors, Mr. Speaker. And it is out of egos. They don't want any other money come to the constituencies or to the villages, Mr. Speaker. And what is happening in devolution, you know, all of us, and everybody in this country knows. Corruption, pilferage, lethargy, incompetence. The only money, Mr. Speaker, that has touched the lives of Kenyans for the last 20 years is the CDF, Mr. Speaker. And I want to tell the One minute. Mr. Speaker, the name of the fund is NG-CDF, National Government, Mr. Speaker. It's not county government, it's not judiciary fund, it's not parliamentary fund, it's not anybody's fund. It's the national government money that is going to the constituencies so that it can build schools, it can build classes, it can build police station, and they're saying there's duplication of functions. We don't do anything outside what the national government is doing. Security and education are not devolved functions, Mr. Speaker. Counties don't do that. Will education improve if today's CDF is abolished? Mr. Speaker, we are going to appeal this judgment, but we will also do a constitutional amendment. We have the powers even to amend the constitution. The judiciary doesn't have. You can declare the act unconstitutional as many times as you like, but we will make sure CDF remains in this country, Mr. Speaker. I submit.
Yes, Kainan.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I was privileged to be a member of Parliament Development Initiative, Mr. Speaker, and I've seen what CDF has done. I have represented 2 constituencies, Mr. Speaker. The number of development projects initiated in my former constituency called Wajir West and my current constituency called Eldas, Mr. Speaker, through CDF is more than the combined development initiative since we got independence, Mr. Speaker. In our place, we say CDF is our government. Mr. Speaker, I want to ask myself, the framers of the current constitution, if you read Article 1, sovereignty has been equated to representation. Who are these busybodies who want to do representation, Mr. Speaker, and rubbish the role of the elected members of Parliament, Mr. Speaker? I have one message for you. We have seen the actions, the inactions, the activities, the inadvertence of these busybodies, whoever they are. Can you stand firm? Can you stand firm as members of Parliament? It's not about the usual complaining, no. Can you stand firm, bring a constitutional amendment so that we entrench the NG-CDF in the Constitution so that we remove it from the ambit of this gullible and vulnerable busybody, Mr. Speaker? Mr. Speaker, for how long shall we deny Kenyans the right to enjoy a piece of the national cake, Mr. Speaker? I'm shocked and dismayed, Mr. Speaker, to see a ruling, and ideally, Mr. Speaker, the role of the 3 arms of government, Mr. Speaker, is interdependent, is to support each other for the good of the well-being of Kenya, Mr. Speaker. But when you have a targeted approach, Mr. Speaker, to rubbish one arm, then doesn't add value. Mr. Speaker, finally, what I want to say is this. When the members of Parliament are elected here, or the framers of the current constitution, Mr. Speaker, some of the functions have been devolved. After this, you will hear provisional administration is illegal because NCDF only covers education and national security. Are those 2 functions, Mr. Speaker, county functions? They are not county functions. These are national functions. So, colleagues, if you want to remain relevant, I know it's not the ambit of the members of Parliament because we have delinked NCDF from the member of Parliament. It's completely an independent entity. That still is being pushed to the member of Parliament. I beg you, if you want to remain relevant, if you want your constituents to develop, stand firm, wake up tomorrow, put your heads together, put this entity, entrench it in the Constitution so that there is no room for any busybodies. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Kadambi. Charity Kadambi.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Sir, allow me to contribute like my colleagues. In this country, Mr. Speaker, sir, I would wonder which Kenyan has not seen the changes which CDF has really brought in this country. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, sir, my issue is to remind people that what CDF is doing in this country, I doubt if there is another fund which is doing what CDF is doing. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, with the changes, with the poor children we are taking to schools, with the schools we are changing, with the security offices we are constructing, with the administration offices we are doing, Mr. Speaker, sir, I am so much worried that there is people not seeing what is happening. And Mr. Speaker, sir, I am contributing because myself being the 2nd-term member of Parliament in Joro constituency, what I have done in my constituency, Your Excellency, Mr. Speaker, sir, for the 1st term is what has brought me the 2nd term. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, I'm standing here to remind our colleagues, let us unite this journey. This is war against development. Mr. Speaker, sir, it is now the high time we united as members of Parliament. We change even if it means changing the Constitution so that we can make sure that the CDF is well anchored in the Constitution. Mr. Speaker, sir, we have gotten a lot of challenge every time. Whichever time we are doing our works as members of parliament from single constituencies, actually we are not at peace because every time we are distracted by so many cases in the courts. And Mr. Speaker, sir, as I'm standing here today, Kenyans are asking, are they safe? Are their children going to go to schools? Are they expecting more constructions of schools when they have seen the challenge which has taken recently in the courts? Mr. Speaker, sir, let me confirm that Kenyans are worried that today there is a threat for the CDF. Therefore, for colleagues, please let us wake the 290 constituencies. Let us protect the development. Let us fight for our children. Let us fight for the development for this constituency through CDF. Mr. Speaker, sir, thank you very much. It is for us to unite and say no to whoever is against our development matters. Thank you.
Yes, Chairman CDF. I would have thought you should have been the last to speak on this.
Oh.
Yes. You are the committee chair. Listen to others. You'll speak last. Naisula. Chairman, hold your horses. I've been seeing you menacing me with gestures.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want to rise to also contribute on the judgment on NG-CDF, Mr. Speaker, and to say that we cannot overemphasize the importance of NG-CDF, Mr. Speaker. There is this notion among many people that NG-CDF is pocket change for members of parliament. I want to say without fear or favor that if there is one fund that there is accountability for, it is NG-CDF. NG-CDF goes to the constituency with an AIE, with what it is supposed to do, and the money follows that AIE. And so even when auditors come to the ground, Mr. Speaker, they have to go and see whether that classroom has been built. They have to go and see whether that police station has been built. They have to see whether that child has gotten bursary. And that is the truth on the ground, Mr. Speaker. And if there is anybody who thinks that there is a member of parliament who is misusing these monies, Mr. Speaker, we have investigative bodies, Mr. Speaker, which we should go and follow up on those monies and that member of parliament, Mr. Speaker. But we cannot be blanketly be condemned to be corrupt, that NG-CDF is our money, Mr. Speaker, when that is not the point, Mr. Speaker. We can also not be a house of lamentation. We are the ones who make the laws in this house, Mr. Speaker. We will not wait for NADCO report to entrench NG-CDF in the Constitution. We should extract NG-CDF from NADCO reports so that we bring it to this house as a standalone issue to be entrenched in the Constitution, Mr. Speaker. Because we might wait for NADCO reports until God knows the 2 years are over. The 13th Parliament should be remembered as the house that entrenched NG-CDF in the Constitution, Mr. Speaker, so that this cannot be a ping-pong game depending on who is on the bench, Mr. Speaker. The second issue, the hate that Honorable Junet has talked about is true. People just generally hate members of parliament. And so I wouldn't even be surprised after it has been entrenched in the Constitution, the judiciary saying it is unconstitutionally inside the Constitution, Mr. Speaker, because of just the hate people have towards members of parliament, Mr. Speaker. To conclude, I want to say this, now that I'm on the floor, Mr. Speaker, to remind the executive, Mr. Speaker, that there is one cabinet secretary position which has not been filled in this country, Mr. Speaker. We are
KJ.
I thank you, Mr. Speaker. And it is to say that the courts...
Order, KJ. Yes, so give her 1 minute.
Please allow me to say this, and thank you, Mr. Speaker. 1 minute. There is a position of a cabinet secretary that has not been filled in this country. And I want to remind the executive, just in case they have forgotten, we do not have the Cabinet Secretary of Gender and Affirmative Action, Mr. Speaker, in this House, Madam Speaker, sorry. If it was another ministry, I want to assure you, by today, the replacement of that cabinet minister would have happened. We cannot continue business when we do not have the Cabinet Secretary of Gender in this country, Mr. Speaker. It should be, the Cabinet Secretary should be appointed like yesterday, Madam Speaker. Even if it is a man, we need a Cabinet Secretary of Gender in this country.
Thank you. What's your point of order, Honorable Donya?
Madam Speaker, I'm just worried Honorable Junet is insisting that it is a man. We have not refused if it is a man, a boy, girl. What we want is to have a minister for gender in office. We keep on talking about gender mainstreaming, helping our young girls and women. How can we, Madam Speaker? Yes, we know it is CDF, but
thank you. Honorable KJ, you may proceed. You are on the floor.
Madam Speaker, I thank you and I acknowledge the change of guard. Madam Speaker, the courts had their day. Today it is Parliament that has its day to remind the courts that even the courts can err, that they can make mistake, Mr. Speaker. When you read that judgment, Madam Speaker, you notice a fundamental fault in how they were deciding on this matter. One of the bigger issues, Madam Speaker, they were saying that the constituency cannot be a unit of devolution. But Madam Speaker, we all know that NG-CDF is not a devolved fund. In fact, the word that she should be using is that national government has decentralized the monies from the center to the 290 constituency, Mr. Speaker, Madam Speaker. And it is also to disabuse the notion, Madam Speaker, that anyone can imagine that by removing NG-CDF, they are punishing a member of parliament. Madam Speaker, in the Goretti South constituency, the NG-CDF is not to benefit John Carrier. The NG-CDF has renovated all primary schools in the constituency. It has built in excess of 7 new schools. Out of the 12 new schools in Nairobi, 7 of them are in the Goretti South constituency. Madam Speaker, it has improved the working status of the officers in Gao, made sure that our people are served in dignified places. So, Madam Speaker, I would want to agree with all the members who are saying that Article 95 and 96 allows this House to make laws, Madam Speaker, and no other entity can make laws. And if that be the case, then we, as the 13th Parliament, must agree that we are the people who are going to entrench this NG-CDF in the Constitution so that it can continue bettering the life of members. Finally, Madam Speaker, we all agree that even if we have devolved units called counties, the devolved units called counties has served more as devolution for corruption rather than devolving services to the people. Madam Speaker, Nairobi City County receives in excess of 30 billion Kenya shillings from division of revenue and monies that they raise as own revenue. That means that in the Goretti South constituency every year, I should be feeling the impact of around 2 billion Kenya shillings coming from Nairobi City County coffers, Madam Speaker. But if you go to the constituency called the Goretti South constituency, what you shall find are the projects that have been put up by this most visible, best managed, and most effective fund called the NG-CDF. So, Madam Speaker, let's do what is necessary. Let us entrench NG-CDF in the Constitution to make...
Honorable members, allow me to recognize the presence of Kiwanzani Academy from Kitui West constituency, Kitui County, who are seated in the public gallery. On behalf of the members of the National Assembly, we welcome you to Bunge. Thank you. The Honorable Amolo Otiende.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, first, let me recognize and thank the team of lawyers that did this matter pro bono, Honorable Chepkonga, Honorable Mrugara, Honorable Kaluma, Honorable Mutuse, Honorable Muriu, Honorable Makali, Honorable Soro, Honorable Mogaka, and myself. Madam Speaker, we have no doubt as a team that the decision rendered by the High Court is wrong on so many fronts. It is wrong on the role of the MPs in CDF. It is wrong on the role and term of the fund account managers who are not in any way connected to the MPs. It is wrong on following the obiter dicta by the Supreme Court, when the Supreme Court rendered an opinion on an act that had since been repealed and therefore is not binding. And for the avoidance of doubt, Madam Speaker, we have already agreed that we will appeal that decision. The good thing is that after declaring the act unconstitutional, the court did a suspension of the declaration of invalidity for 2 years. That is enough time for us to prosecute a number of things. It is enough time for us to prosecute the appeal. You will remember, Madam Speaker, that previously the High Court declared the previous act unconstitutional. The Court of Appeal did not agree and affirmed it, and only the High Court then agreed with the only the Supreme Court then agreed with the High Court. It is quite possible that we might follow a similar trajectory on this matter. Madam Speaker, secondly, and this we have said before, the ultimate solution to all this push and pull is amendment of the Constitution. And that amendment, Madam Speaker, we have already agreed, even in the Justice and Legal Affairs Committee, that we want to make it a standalone amendment away from the entire NADCO report. It is our view as the lawyers and at the Justice and Legal Affairs Committee that we can execute that amendment without requiring a referendum. Madam Speaker, the beauty is that once we have entrenched the NG-CDF, then the constitutional provision cannot be unconstitutional. It will be along the lines of having entrenched the judiciary fund, and that then should be a proper cushion. But once we do the amendment, we will then again have to redo the act itself by bringing a new act, which will be in line with the amendment. Madam Speaker, a lot of people do not understand, and if you allow me just one more minute, Madam Speaker, that before CDF and before all the 290 constituencies in this country, it is only through devolution that just as I'm finishing, Madam Speaker, we must also pass a message to, as I'm closing, Madam Speaker, the real drivers of these cases is not even the two people who went to court. It is the governors, it is the Senate, and there's some particular NGO called the Institute for Social Accountability that has kept bringing these cases on instigation of these others. We must tell them that even if these funds went away, they will not go to the governors. They will not go to those who think that they will get it, not even the Senate. It will re-centralize, and you will not see that money. And with that, Madam Speaker, let us also demand that the balance of monies that should have been given in the last financial year, about 50 million that is owed to each constituency, be now released so that we can do the projects that ought to have been done. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The Honorable Wakili Robert Edwin Murray.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, Madam Speaker, for the opportunity to ventilate on this very wrong judgment which has been passed against NG-CDF. Madam Speaker, I was part of the legal team which represented Parliament on this matter. We were able to ventilate on a number of issues, and to our surprise, Madam Speaker, out of 9 key issues, none of them the court was able to appreciate, despite the fact that we were able to put in the proper legal position, the constitutional position, but the court came in as a biased court. Madam Speaker, my worry and concern, because in any trial, you are able to get the things which are not being said, but the petitioners, whose name has been alluded in this house, the Council of Governors, our Senate, they have one key issue which I would say is a sibling jealousy. In this sense, Madam Speaker, a council could stand before the judges and say, look, now you are members of parliament, this money you'll be using as pocket money to campaign for it. It tells you the kind of conversations you are making. The County of Governors, they know very well, they spend 90% of their money doing trips and doing other mundane things which has no benefit to our people. Madam Speaker, I'm trying to urge the members of parliament, let us not lament like people who have no hope. This parliament has power to ensure that we're able to cure this issue or these myriad issues of litigation against NG-CDF once and for all. Though, Madam Speaker, we are going to the Court of Appeal. We have a strong case. The ultimate goal is to ensure we have entrenched the fund in the Constitution in such a way that in the future, nobody can come back and claim that the fund is unconstitutional.
Let me give the Honorable Millie Odhiambo, then I'll come to you, Honorable Osoro.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for giving me this opportunity. Madam Speaker, I just want to, the entire legal team was men. There's no women, and yet there are brilliant women lawyers like me in this house. Next time, put us there, and we'll help you. Secondly, Madam Speaker, in areas that have been predominantly opposition, the only fund you can rely on that is changing lives is CDF. Third, Madam Speaker, in my own constituency, I have seen us move from mud-walled, grass-thatched schools to permanent schools. I would want to encourage the judges and people who live in cities to do an immersion in the village so that they know the reality. Yes. A lot of people do not, he does not know what people go through. That is a very good concept that something good is finally coming out of Africa. CDF, development, and Madam Speaker, I was just discussing with Honorable Tiende Amolo that we must be brave as lawyers. And if there is one legacy we must leave in this house, is to entrench the fourth role of a member of parliament in this country, which is development. If it does not come through NG-CDF, it will come through my pocket. That is the reality. And the members that came before us were overwhelmed. That is why they promoted this. Right now, the role of MPs has totally been removed. But MPs are still being harassed. Put it and make MPs have a role. I have no excuse. Anybody can bash me what they want. But as an intellectual and as a bright lawyer, this is one thing I am willing to defend to my grave. Bora usiguze NG-CDF. Wengine wanasema bora usiguze mulima, mimi bora usiguze NG-CDF. Hapo tutapigana.
The Honorable Member for South Mugirango, Honorable Sylvanus Osoro.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I also want to associate myself with the sentiments that have been made by my colleagues. And I also do not want to delve so much on the judgment that was delivered last week, because I've actually gone through it. In all aspects, I'm actually against it by all standards, because it actually does not meet jurisprudential, authority in all aspects. I mean, the learned judges, Honorable Speaker, only focused on what we call the school of thought in jurisprudence that we call positivism, where they are so keen on unnecessary positivism and they ignore the element in a very social matter, ignore the socialism jurisprudence, ignore the natural law in all aspects, Honorable Speaker. But I do not want to go that direction, Honorable Speaker. But of importance, Honorable Speaker, for me, it is the character of the Council of Governors. Honorable Speaker, NG-CDF is 2.5% of the national budget. Each constituency gets about 130 million thereabout when you do tabulation. County governments get a minimum of 15%. In fact, this house gave them in the last financial year 25% last financial year. about 25 or 26% thereabout in the last financial year, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, when you do tabulation, you'll realize that in the 2.5% that we get, or the constituencies get in terms of the NG-CDF, each constituency gets about 120 million at the highest, or 140 million shillings. Honorable Speaker, with the allocated amounts in the counties, some counties that get about 11 billion in the shared revenue, place in their budget 500 million for the office of the governor's expense. 500 million. But NG-CDF for the consumption of the common mwananchi, only 100 million. With 11 billion in some counties, and even some of them getting up to 15 billion, you will actually need a microscope, and I've said this several times, to see what governors do. But they were the first people to go in court, Honorable Speaker. They applied to be interested parties in this matter. They even wrote a letter to the Chief Justice. And in now very common character and demeanor of the current court, Honorable Speaker, they've applied what we call judicial activism, populist rulings, populist judgments, where they now get their jurisprudence from Facebook, from social media, from messages they get, and sometimes from some political leaders who are against very important concepts.
Order number 15, that the Energy Amendment Bill, Senate Bills number 42 of 2023, be now read a second time. You may proceed to vote. May the following senators proceed to dispatch. Senator Nyutu, Senator Morango. Order, honorable senators. The result of the vote is as follows. Ayes at 30, nays 0, abstention. Bill number 24 of 2023 be now read a second time. You may proceed to vote. May the following honorable senators proceed to dispatch to get assistance, so now to cast their votes. Senator Fernandi, Senator Chiranke, Senator Eddie Okech, and Senator Newton. Senator Newton, proceed to dispatch and cast your vote. Senator Fernandi. Senator for Nandi, take your seat, please. The result of the vote is as follows. Ayes at 30, nays at 0, abstention at 0. So the ayes have it.
The National Disaster Risk Management Bill 2023, a bill for an act of parliament to establish the National Disaster Risk Management Authority and county disaster risk management committees to provide a legal framework for the coordination of disaster risk management activities and for connected purposes.
Sergeant at Arms, you may now open the doors and withdraw the bar. Next order. Now, honorable senators, we had deferred comments on the statements. So we'll conclude that before we go to order number 17. Wafula, you had the floor.
Asante Mheshimiwa Spika, nashukuru. Nilikuwa nachangia hoja kwamba kuna miradi mingi ya maendeleo katika kaunti zetu, miradi ambayo kaunti imekwama. Kwa mfano, kuna kaunti ambazo miradi na mijengo imekwama kwa muda wa takriban karibu miaka 10. Kaunti zingine miradi miaka 6, miaka 3, na hatuoni sababu inayoshinikiza miradi hii kutokamilika. Na tukipiga kurunzi, Mheshimiwa Spika, tunapata kwamba ni miradi ambayo huwapa kipato wanakandarasi ama baadhi ya maafisa katika kaunti husika, na hivi kuhakikisha kwamba Wakenya na kaunti wanakamuliwa pasipo wao kujua. Sasa naunga Mheshimiwa Kavindu mkono kwamba magavana na serikali za kaunti ziweze kujukumika wanapoanzisha miradi ya maendeleo, ikamilike katika awamu zao za uongozi, ili kwamba wale ambao wanachukua tamu za uongozi baadaye hawalipi madeni na kushughulika na madeni ambayo hawakuhusika kuidhinisha na kuanzisha miradi hii. Mheshimiwa Spika, vile vile ni jambo ambalo linadhihirika kwamba miradi hii hupitishwa pasipo matarajio ya baadhi ya viongozi katika kaunti. Wanangoja palipo awamu ya mwisho ya makataa ya bajeti ama siku za kifedha, ndipo miradi hii kwa haraka hupitishwa katika awamu ya kimombo nasema supplementary budget. Sasa mimi naomba jumba la Senate liweze kumakinika na kuhakikisha kwamba mambo kama haya yanasitishwa na hatua madhubuti kuchukuliwa. Jambo la pili, Mheshimiwa Spika, ni kuunga Mheshimiwa mwenyekiti wa kamati ya ukulima kwamba tutasitisha vikao vyetu ili kuhakikisha fedha ambazo kamati zinapewa ni fedha za kutosha kuhakikisha kwamba kamati ya ukulima inaenda nyanjani kushughulika na zaraa ama ukulima ambao umegatuliwa kirasmi katika nchi ya Kenya. Mheshimiwa Spika, hatuwezi kuwa tunakaa Nairobi kupiga gumzo, kuboronga Kiingereza, kutunga sheria hapa Nairobi ili hali hatuendi mashinani, wakulima wa mashinani wahusishwe katika sheria ambazo tunashughulikia. Mheshimiwa Spika, juzi tulikuwa katika hatua za kufanya majadiliano ya mswada kule Mombasa, na tukakatisha safari yetu kwa sababu tukarudi Nairobi mioyo ikisononeka. Ilipaswa vile vile tuendelee na mikutano mingi. Sasa mimi naomba Mheshimiwa Spika, kwa niaba ya wale ambao huenda wanaumia na wameshindwa kuzungumza, Mheshimiwa Spika, kusema kwamba kamati za bunge zipewe fedha za kutosha. Na tukiangalia miaka na seneti miaka iliyopita walikuwa wanapewa fedha za kutosha za kufanya kazi. Sasa mimi naomba turudi katika kumbukumbu za kifedha, tuone iwapo miaka 10 iliyopita kamati ilikuwa inapewa milioni 20, milioni 15, iwaje sasa ambapo tumepiga hatua nyingi za gatuzi tunaanza kukohoa na kukatiwa hewa ya kifedha. Mheshimiwa Spika, sasa hili ni jambo ambalo viongozi katika jumba hili, viongozi katika kamati na jumba la Senate, mumakinike, mujinyanyue na mututetee, kwa sababu tumewapa nafasi. Hatutaraji sisi wenyewe tuje hapa tuanze kuzusha, tuanze kudai kana kwamba sisi sio jumba la Senate ambalo hugawia makaunti fedha za ugatuzi za kufanya maendeleo. Na mwisho, Mheshimiwa Spika, juzi tulipitisha bilioni 400 kwenye na imalizwe katika awamu. Asante Mheshimiwa Spika.
And Honorable Senators, the time that was allocated was 15 minutes for statement comments on the statements. And fortunately, Senator Okoli has used almost 6 minutes. So let us get now Senator Ososi Godfrey. Within 2 minutes, you can make just one comment on the statements.
Chair, I want to make a comment on the statement by the Chair of Standing Committee on Education on the matter of the current study they are doing on ECD, so that, Mr. Speaker, they come up with a uniform scheme of service for ECD. Mr. Speaker, this would be one of the greatest achievements of this Senate if this matter was prioritized, because we have a crisis in the management of ECDs in our counties. And it is a high time that the Committee for Education finalized this report and brought it to this House so that we can pass it and have it implemented in our counties. Mr. Speaker, very soon, my committee of CPIC is going to present a report on their findings after being misused and mismanaged, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, it is illegal for our counties to continue appropriating money into these bursary funds or the so-called governor scholarship funds when that function is not a devolved function. Is a national government function, Mr. Speaker. And they are putting money in these funds, at the same time starving the ECDs and the vocational training centers of the funds that are required to run them efficiently. Mr. Speaker, one of the most fundamental things that this House has to do is to abolish all the bursary funds that we have in our counties. Let people get bursaries from the national government, CDF, or from Ministry of Education. Let the counties focus on devolved function. That is the ECDs.
Just a minute, Senator. So what is your point of order, Senator? Point of information. Do you want to be informed?
He can inform me because he's a member of my committee and we have been dealing with the bursary funds, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Speaker, I just wanted to inform the chair of CPIC and the deputy party leader of ODM, Senator Osotsi, on the beat around the proper scheme of service for teachers at the ECD level. The bill you have just passed at the second reading, the bill on ECD, comprehensively seeks to address this particular issue. And I wanted to inform him that I know he has voted for the bill, but maybe he hasn't read that bill. And the reason why I'm informing him is because he's one of the most important senators of this House in terms of coming up with serious amendments. So that in the third reading of that bill, perhaps he can propose amendments, but that bill has just passed the third reading, in the second reading that we'll just add right now in the division. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Senator Eddy.
Conclude, Senator Ososi.
Yes, thank you, Senator Eddy. You know, the scheme of service is one thing, but there are other challenges that face ECD management in our counties, including even provision of appropriate environment for learning. For example, classrooms, sanitary areas, they are not there in most of our ECDs. So it is a comprehensive matter. And that capacity issues around the ECDs are largely caused by low financing or funding of these ECD programs in our counties. And that's why, Mr. Speaker, I'm saying it will be important for us to review the way the counties spend their money on education. It is illegal. And this has been going on for some time, Mr. Speaker, where counties put money in bursaries so that they can easily steal, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I think this House has to rise to the occasion and abolish the bursary funds that we have in our counties. And soon, Mr. Speaker, after completion of a report, we'll be bringing a report in this House that demonstrates how bursary funds and the governor's scholarship funds, or some counties have even invested in school infrastructure, building.
Senator Chalge Samson.
Mr. Speaker, sir, I just wanted to react to the statement made by the chairperson of Agriculture. One, it is disappointing that the issue of capacity and ability of committees is dysfunctional. Mr. Speaker, as the chair of Liaison Committee, I expect you to intervene on this matter. And Senator Faki had requested for Kamkunji. I hope we can be able to discuss this matter. Secondly and finally, Chair, I needed an update from the chair of Agriculture, Mr. Speaker, on the issue of bonus. You remember where I come from, Nandi County, Vihiga, Kakamega, Nyamira, Kisii, Bomet, and Kericho, our tea bonuses were very low. We were receiving 17 to 25 shillings. But on this other side of the country, Mr. Speaker, sir, they were receiving up to 61 shillings bonuses, Mr. Speaker. And that is why I expected even up to Bungoma. Mr. Speaker, that's why I expected on the issue of tea bonus. I saw even in your area today, I saw your people demonstrating, yet they are getting even more better, up 57 to 60 shillings. As in Nandi, we are getting only 15 shillings, 17 shillings to 25 shillings, Mr. Speaker. So this issue on tea bonuses of our farmers, especially from the Rift Valley, Mr. Speaker, and part of Nyanza, and part of Western Kenya, Mr. Speaker, we are suffering, Mr. Speaker. We need this issue of tea bonuses to be told. Because you cannot tell us that the tea that comes, Mr. Speaker, from another part of Kenya fetches more bonuses over that come from Rift Valley, Mr. Speaker. And that is why, Mr. Speaker, I want to appeal to the Agriculture Committee to tell the country what really is happening about the bonuses that we have in this country, Mr. Speaker. So that our...
Senator Chalege, in just a minute. You know the statement by the Agriculture Committee was on the business that have been on the committee for the last session to date. Maybe that business is not before the committee on the team bonuses. So maybe if there is a statement you have sought, you will be able to respond to that matter when the time comes. But he could not respond to something that has not been finalized by the committee.
Mr. Speaker, in conclusion, I have seen in the statement he has talked about the Kenya Tea Development Agency, the issue of tea matters are in his statement that were presented today. So, Mr. Speaker, but also our committees should be judicially noticed of what is happening, Mr. Speaker. I thought that has been the thumb rule of committees. But I know the chair of Agriculture, we have expectations a lot from him, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I thank you.
We're almost concluding now, Senator Kaluda Beit Sengo. On statements, I think that should be the end of that session.
Thank you. Asante sana, Mheshimiwa Spika. Nasimama kuunga mkono hoja iliyowasilishwa na Senator wa Machakos, Senator Agnes Kavindu, kuhusu miradi ambayo imesimama katika kaunti zetu. Na kwa hakika niseme kwa miradi mingi ambayo imesimama na imeacha kumaliziwa, imekosa kumaliziwa, imekosa kutimiza kazi ambayo ilianzishwa kufanya, ni kwa sababu ya viongozi ambao walikuwa awali, kama ni governor akipata mradi ambao ilianzishwa na predecessor wake ama governor aliyekuweko mbele, ama kama ni mbunge ama mwakilishi wa wodi, wanaacha hizo miradi kwa sababu za kisiasa. Anaona akimalizia hiyo miradi atakayepata sifa na ni yule aliyetangulia kuanzisha huo mradi, ambao ni makosa, Mheshimiwa Spika. Jambo la pili ni kusema kwamba pesa ya umma inatumika kuanzisha hii miradi, na hiyo miradi isipomaliziwa, kamilika ndio ifaidi wananchi, pesa ya umma inapotea na imekuwa wasted, na ambao ni makosa sana, Mheshimiwa Spika, kwa pesa ya umma kupotea na kukosa kufaidi wenye nchi. Niseme Bwana Spika, maendeleo ambayo inakusudiwa kuletwa na pesa ya umma, miradi ikianzishwa katika counties zetu na inakosa kukamilika na inakosa kutumika, basi inakuwa maendeleo inasimama. Na tunajua kama viongozi katika jumba la Seneti, sisi utetea ukamilifu na kufanya kazi kwa devolution. Kwa hivyo isipofanyika, basi inakuwa kwamba sisi kazi yetu haijahalalishwa kikamilifu, na basi wananchi wa Kenya wanapoteza pesa zao, maendeleo inakosa kupatikana mashinani, na wananchi wanahangaika ili hali walipiga kura, wanalipa ushuru, na pesa zao ambazo wanatumia kwa kulipa ushuru zinapaswa kutumika kuleta maendeleo kwa wananchi, na basi maendeleo inakosa na inakuwa ni kupoteza pesa za wananchi ambayo haistahili. Mheshimiwa Spika, nitachangia kidogo kuhusu ripoti iliyoletwa na mwenyekiti wa ukulima. Mimi ni mwanakamati wa kamati ya ukulima, na ni vibaya Mheshimiwa Spika kwamba mgao wa fedha ambao unapaswa kwenda kwa kamati, basi kwa kamati ya ukulima inapaswa.
Can we now go to the next order?
Order number 17, the Division of Revenue Amendment Bill, National Assembly Bills number 38 of 2024, second reading, resumption of debate.
I'm informed that Senator Boni Karware and a balance of 13 minutes on this motion. Do you intend to proceed executing?
Mr. Speaker, I would like to proceed. I had barely started, then time was up. So I would like to use a bit of that time. And I want to thank you, Mr. Speaker, for allowing me. In the first 5 or so minutes when I spoke, I was able to go into the work we did as a committee, and I want to use this opportunity to request colleagues, members of this Senate, for support of our report on the fact that we do not remove even 1 shilling from the revenue that this House passed. That the 400, I know counties are faced with serious problems of pending bills, talking about Kakamega, talking about Nairobi. The pressure is too much. So I want to urge governors, as soon as they get this money, even if some of them do not respect us, we've done our bit. Let them make sure that the economies in our counties remain vibrant through settlement of pending bills. And Mr. Speaker, saying this, it reminds me, according to the report of the Controller of Budget, my county of Kakamega has had a whooping 1.47 billion shillings in pending bills. And it took me a lot of interest, a lot of hard work to push the governor to start paying these bills. I want to thank this same committee, without which Governor Barasa had refused to pay the people who gave credit to our county, and now he has been able to pay 751,800,000. Mr. Speaker, I want to congratulate the governor for paying this 771.8 million shillings to our creditors. And I want to assure the remaining creditors who have not received their money due in pending bills worth 718 1.2 million shillings, to rest assured and know that for as long as God allows me to be the senator of Kakamega, before the end of this financial year, Governor Barasa will have to pay this balance. And I want to congratulate them. When we were doing our oversight conference at the Golf Hotel, the information they gave us was very useful, and we are using that information. They'll be paid. And for Governor Barasa, we have summoned you to come to the Senate to demonstrate why you cannot pay this balance, because you have no reason. We've given you the money as the Senate of Kenya. Mr. Speaker, it is important that before I end the contribution on this very important bill, we must speak to some of the bad manners by our governors. Some of our governors have got serious bad manners. We must call them out. Mr. Speaker, right now, I've just been watching some news on social media. I hope it is true. And it shows unrest in the county of Nandi. Mr. Speaker, it shows unrest in the county of Kericho.
For Nandi wants to inform you, I don't know on what matters.
Yeah, Mr. Speaker, I'm concerned about the unrest in Nandi, and they're my neighbors.
So do you wish to be informed by the
Yes, on behalf of
Nandi?
the lawyers of Jesumei who live and vote in Nandi, I would love to be informed.
Proceedings in the
Mr. Speaker, I want to inform my good neighbor Omwami, the bullfighter, and we talk. Nandi County Assembly is under siege because the people of Nandi are moving the MCAs to commence impeachment proceedings against the inept governor, Sang, and remove him from office. And I want to assure there have also been some blows, exchange of blows by members of County Assembly. And Mr. Speaker, this is, we must ensure devolution works by fire, Mr. Speaker. Even, and I want to confirm that this House should be ready for impeachment against the governor of Nandi, Governor Sang, in the next few weeks. Because from the intelligence I have, Mr. Speaker.
What is the information that you wanted to pass?
I wanted to confirm to him that it is true that there is unrest in Nandi because people are tired of bad governance and corruption that is being perpetuated by the governor of Nandi, Sang. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Speaker, I'm grateful because I was worried that somebody would shoot up and challenge me for quoting social media. Of course, social media cannot stand in this House. So the confirmation from the distinguished senator of Nandi that there is unrest in Nandi must be taken seriously. And even more so by Senator Boni Khalwale and Senator Osoti, because our cousins come from that county. Mr. Speaker, it's amazing that one of the voters in Nandi gave me a payslip, a copy of a payslip, and showed that a relative, a very close relative of the governor, is drawing a salary of 145,000 shillings per month, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, a governor's relative, who I don't mind, our relatives can work in our offices. They're entitled to jobs in counties. But when those relatives are over 60 years old, then it calls into question why they could be drawing a salary for not earning that money because they're not in employment. They're ghost workers, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I want to call out our governors on bad manners of the cost of foreign travel. The bill of foreign travel in this country by governors is amazing, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the most traveled governors, the governor of Nairobi, governor of Kakamega, shame on you. And the governor of Nandi. What are they doing? Mr. Speaker, imagine the governor of Kakamega spent 418 million shillings, 640,000 to fly around. Sang spent 310 million shillings, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, even if their friends are in here and they are comfortable about this truth, we will call them out. Mr. Speaker, sir, the bad manners of refusing to digitalize, Mr. Speaker, revenue collection is because governors want manual collection so that at the end of the day, they sit in the office with the finance people to share the daily connections like bank robbers. Mr. Speaker, can you imagine that a great young woman like Gladys Wanga, she comes from a very small county with limited opportunities of how to raise her own source revenue. And Gladys Wanga is leading from the front. She's doing a good job. I hear she's now the chair of the Orange Democratic Movement. That is extremely attractive. I think your party is starting to look good. Very good indeed. If the chair can lead in realization of on-source revenue, ODM is doing very well. Mr. Speaker, Gladys Wanga raised 1.2 billion shillings from a rural constituency, a rural county. Madam Speaker, I also want to congratulate the governor of Narok. He raised 4.75 billion shillings. Narok here, the Masa is when you see them in the white shukas, they are able to contribute their own source revenue worth 4.75 billion shillings. Mr. Speaker, the governor of Nairobi, he does a few bad things, but then surprises me with very good things. Like on own source revenue, he has done well. He has raised 12 billion shillings. Mr. Speaker, I cannot fail to congratulate the governor of Bungoma on source revenue. Governor Lusaka found